Here. Hello, everybody. As we sit here, everybody knows we've bought Greenland now, right?
Wait, what? This is real?
America owns Greenland. No, that's just me saying shit.
I was like...
The Dutch will have something to say about that.
Yeah.
Like, today, that feels plausible.
Well, the what was it? How did that conversation even start, actually?
It got leaked.
Like, I suppose Trump was saying he wanted to buy Greenland.
Yeah.
That seems to be what the story was. So
It seems plausible. I could never tell you whether or not that is even close to real.
right. Well, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't know why you want to do that, but okay. Do you know what Greenland is? That would be my first question. This is such not a tech topic, but it's important. I mean, we're supposedly wanting to buy a whole part of a country.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it's arguable whether half of the Danes even know that
That's like
it's part of their country, sort of, but not really. I'm very confused by the whole matter, too, honestly. And I don't know. It honestly makes me think, what's actually going on that we don't know about?
I feel like somebody might have said, like, Greenland's got a lot of, like, fresh water. Like this is, like, some kind of, like, way to play into, like, water crisis conversation. So it's like, we're going to buy the country with a lot of fresh water.
It's melting it all into the ocean.
I felt like it was hedging his bets against climate change.
Yeah.
Like that really was.
To be beachfront property.
Yeah.
Put golf courses there.
Yeah,
something
like he's
that.
going to build. something
Yeah.
later
Yeah, I
on.
don't
His grandkid. Barron Trump can invest.
I don't know.
Not
It's
Barron,
just,
he's the kid.
it feels very...
That is barren, right?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I'm going to invest in fresh water. It seems smart.
There it goes. Okay, now we're not glowing angels.
I mean, I could always be a glowing angel. That's fine.
Yeah, well, I can fix it later. You know, I can turn you into a glow. You know what? This is going to be interesting in post-production. So, anyway, welcome everybody. All, as I say, 50 million of you. I'm Adrian. This is Emerald City Tech Conversations, episode 3 now. And as I have want to do for some weird reason, I'll let Jeff introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Jeff Nickoloff. I'm from the Pacific Northwest originally, living in Arizona since 2000.
Wait, so you're not living here where we are right now?
No, I'm constantly moving all over the place.
Oh, so you travel a lot,
Yeah, I do.
like people do in tech.
especially in tech.
Yeah, that's cool. So where exactly do you live at in Arizona?
We're in Tempe, Arizona,
Tempe. Oh,
which is right down there by ASU, which is where I went to school.
I've been there once.
Yeah?
I took the train thing.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I went down and hung out. Well, I hung out in the middle of nowhere for like a week with some friends. And then I hung out in like the hipster part, like Old Phoenix,
Okay, yeah.
and rode the tram, light rail, whatever we call it in the
Sure.
the thing with flanged wheels, past the airport to ASU, and then hung out in some area over there for a while, for like a day or 3. I think it might have been 3. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's a very entertaining time.
Yeah, we,
You should meet Jeff Carpenter too.
oh yeah?
Yeah, it's my boss. He lives there.
Really?
Yeah. He also just said, yay, Arizona.
Yeah, man. It's like Tempe is a good little place. Like we've got the school right there, which keeps things like feeling young and vibrant. And there's not a whole lot of like young people powered business, but there's like a lot of little innovation pockets and a lot of people who just don't know that they haven't been told no by anybody yet.
Oh, right.
So they're just kind of going for it.
That's a good way to get started. Just do a thing.
Yeah, why not, right?
That's cool. You should talk about the Phoenix meetup scene. Oh, yeah, there's a meetup scene too.
There's a meetup scene. So I started the Docker meetup in 2014 there.
Oh, nice.
Have been running that for a long time. Not as many meetups with that recently, but also did DevOps Days last year, which was really cool.
Very cool.
But it's a pretty healthy meetup scene. I feel like, especially in tech, like there's a lot of different like pockets of technologists that but like Phoenix is like really, it's a huge city. There are like 7 million people in that metro area, but like the tech scene is, especially people who participate outside of work, is like very close knit, right? Like there's like 2 degrees of separation between every person there. Like
I feel like that's how, even myself, having been in the Northwest here for, like 20 something years, and then being like not anywhere near the southwestern corner of the U.S. for any consecutive period of time, more than a week or 2.
Yeah.
But somehow I still know about the meetup space there in Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. Well, at least it was incredible for a few years there. Like in the last few years, I don't know. Like either I've become more detached, or it's just seemed more detached. Yeah, a little bit. There was, but man, like in 2014, 2015, 2016, it was on fire. Like especially the Node scene was out of control. Oh, yeah. Like there was a really, really good JS like brain trust down there.
We had multiple people come up from Phoenix. Like they almost. And it was somebody was even like, oh, we're gonna do a geek train to Portland. I'm like, no, you're not. Are you sure? That takes like 4 days.
Yeah.
They didn't eventually because like, oh, we'll just fly. But I think we had like 3 or 4 people actually speak at No PDX conference that me and a couple friends put together, and it was amazing because it was like we felt like we had a little piece of Phoenix that just sliced itself off, came up to Portland, and hung out for the whole like half a week that we did that, which is super cool. And then that was kind of the beginning of me even knowing what was going on in Phoenix, and led eventually to me coming down for that 2-week trip.
Yeah.
Which, talk about naive, you pointed out how many million people live there.
It's huge.
The last time I looked, I guess, was when I had encyclopedias, so that might give you a date time on that one.
Right.
So there's something like 800,000 people there.
Yeah.
That was my current knowledge, and then I got there, and it was just like.
That's always kind of like a weird thing, like when people want to talk about like the population of Phoenix. Like, if you want to talk about Phoenix, right. Like Phoenix proper, like
and then there's like Metro.
It's big, but it's not that big. Like anybody except for people who are participating in local civics will like they're usually talking about the entire metro area.
Yeah, we have the same thing here because everybody in the metro area of Seattle is from Seattle.
Right.
Albeit that would seriously confuse you or also get you stuck in the wrong part of town. Not like in a dangerous sense because it's super.
But just because
here, but
there's a lot of terrain here.
Right. There's a lot of terrain, and if you think you're going to go from point A to point B in the metro area quickly, that doesn't happen.
No.
So, what are we freezing up? No, okay, we're there. Like if you're in, like sometimes people even in Tacoma or Everett, which are completely independent cities with hundreds of thousands of people in each, they'll say they're from Seattle, and it's like, no. Right. Seattle's like this little place here with 800,000 people. Right. There's 3-point-something million something people in the area. So yeah.
Right. Well, it's like kind of like you have to level what you say based on your perception of your audience.
Yeah.
True. Right. So if I'm talking to somebody in Seattle, I'll say I'm in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Right. If I'm talking to somebody in the Bay Area, I'll definitely say I'm from Phoenix. I might even just say Arizona so that they know what I'm talking about. But if I'm talking to somebody in Phoenix, then I'll actually say, yeah, I'm in Tempe.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's cool. So you're in Tempe. You're in the meetup scene. What exactly do you do? I kind of know, but tell everybody else about what you do.
we kind of, I do a little bit of everything. So went to school at ASU, got my CS degree after a long time. Mm-hmm. Put myself through school by getting a job in IT, doing software development and support and things that you do in IT, right?
Yeah.
But it was a really cool little learning ground because, you know, they've got a captive large audience at ASU, right? Like there's 100,000 unique visitors to the website every day, right? Which is not gigantic by today's web standards, but it's also not teeny.
Right, it's still substantial.
Right, so like, you know, while I'm in school, I'm getting practical like knowledge with several types of relational databases. I'm like working with LDAP servers, I'm syncing data, integration stuff, I exposure to several languages because you're inheriting several generations of code, right? So it was a really, really cool learning ground. After that, I went to Limelight Networks, learned a whole different part of tech, got a whole different kind of exposure to the world. between ASU and Limelight, I started a little web dev business with a bunch of people at ASU. Got a whole bunch of strong opinions about small business and catering to small business. And then I went to Amazon, and Amazon has a little office right down there in downtown Tempe, which is amazing. And I have to say, my first 6 months there was like, you get a whole another like 4-year degree as far as learning goes.
Oh yeah. 20-hour days.
Yeah. Well, no, we were actually pretty good about keeping like really like reasonable hours.
That's good.
But yeah, we had a dynamite team. But yeah, so in 2013, there was like this huge tech renaissance that I was incredibly jealous of because I was using almost none of it at Amazon. But like that year, like everything was exciting to me, especially compared like 2012, we had all the Snowden depression like news, and like everybody got hyper intense about like end-to-end encryption, which got me like super paranoid and all sorts of stuff. And then like 2013 comes out and it's like 3D vision, like stereoscopic recording, 3D printers, drones, containers. What else happened that year?
That's Node PDX year, and you're just listing off like everything we ended up talking about.
In 2013, everything that happened in this decade all started in 2013.
Yeah.
All the things that people are making business from now was all 2013. We're just figuring out how to productionize it.
Yep. I feel like that everything from like distributed databases to drone stuff to VR to IoT stuff. Like
IoT exploded, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like that was inception year.
Yeah, no, everything happened that year, and every day on Hacker News was just like 1,000 reasons why I'd need to be doing something else.
Yeah.
and like peer-to-peer messaging was like a big thing that year. And anyway, so in 2014, I got like really into Docker. In 2013, I got really into Docker. In 2014, an acquisitions editor from Manning Publications asked me if I want to write a book, and I said yes. And Amazon was like, "You can't do that," because this was like when they were like being very sensitive about external activity.
They still don't let people write books.
Yeah, so they were like, "You can't do it," and I was like, "Well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I know a lot about this really important piece of technology that's emerging right now."
Yeah.
And they were like, no. So I said, well, I just don't work here anymore. And so I left and to pursue that. I loved working there. Like, it was an amazing experience, and I would do it again, but I needed to be able to do that.
Right.
So I wrote a book, did a lot of consulting on Docker, a lot of like distributed systems, Docker in Action. We're actually releasing the second edition here in a couple months. It's through development. We're doing copy editing now, so it's almost ready.
Cool.
But yeah, I try to spend my time not being a shill for people.
Yeah.
To me, it's more about the engineering.
Yeah. I hear that. Well, as long as you say who you're working for, you're not a shill then. It's only when you walk in and pretend to be into something, and then you're like, oh, you get paid by them?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm interesting. There was a whole local blow up about like dev advocates and stuff being shills here in Seattle. That was started by, well, let's just say some people. And the thing is like, how much more do people need to say who they work for to make sure that that isn't the perception?
It's irrelevant, right? Like, I mean, honestly, people will hear that, but they don't actually recognize the admission.
I think that's,
and a lot of times it's like, it's really, really straightforward, but like if all you hear is the reasons to do something, and you just kind of take all that information on faith, you're going to be led into a lot of really hairy places.
Yeah, no, that is, I know, I've been led down to some and then gone, oh, Adrian, what have you gotten yourself into? That's cool though. It's interesting that you bring up 2013, because I often have it pops up to me, not particularly like I'm saying at 2013 is when this stuff started. It just bubbles up as organic conversation a lot of the time. It's like, in 2013, kind of 2012, when all this stuff started happening. And like, that's when I started heavily getting into distributed database technology, which I do now, data stacks with Cassandra. But then I was doing it with React, and learning Erlang and stuff. I get into other distributed system stuff, tried to do some work with Cloud Foundry with
Yep.
Ruby, which was a weird catastrophe. It's a whole different story. But it was so much fun. It seemed like the beginning of all of these things, and now it definitely, like you were saying, that stuff's coming to maturity at this point, which is really cool.
I mean, in 2013, like in my lunch break, I mean, if you were to search for like just do a Google search for like, hey, distributed systems, like problems and algorithms, like there was no content then. Like you had maybe like 2 or 3 like ACM papers or something like published by Stanford or something like that. But they were very kind of like out there random little things.
Yeah.
Or they were like hyper like use case specific. Like you would occasionally get some like interesting CRDT stuff or because we're kind of like, that was kind of like after the online collaborative editor stuff. So you get like operational transformation papers that would come out. But like some of the most interesting things were like, I sat down and I watched this live stream. It was like kind of early this stuff too, which was also 2013.
Oh yeah.
And then like it was this really great conversation because they had like a CS professor or a postdoc. There was a physics postdoc.
Yeah.
There was like an engineer, and there was one other person, I don't remember what their specialty were, but there was just like an hour-long conversation where the physicist was like talking about causality. And like you had this really awesome like interdisciplinary conversation where they were actually talking about all the same thing, just using very different terms and like helping each other think about distributed systems with this very different context.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing, and I was just like potato chipping everything that I could get about it, right?
That's awesome.
But really interesting time.
I always love distributed systems conversations when you have someone that has a very academic point of view and approach to the things, but then you have like the layman terms being used on this other part where somebody's like, well, I have this stuff and I had to do this thing for this business.
Right.
And they don't know, like, you know, they're not even calling stuff nodes or whatever, you know, like very, very fundamentally, they're like, this is what we needed to happen. So we worked toward it happening. So we had to like reverse engineer, figure it out. Right. Whereas like the academic side is like, well, you needed this outcome and we've thought about it from this perspective. So it's always, I always really enjoy seeing like the collision of people who just had to make it happen versus people who got to sit down and think about making it happen.
Right.
That's a lot of fun. So of all these things that you work with, because like you got the Docker book coming out. Yep. Which also I'll just note, Jeff said he can't write a book, which is ironic because his book is right there called Cassandra, the Definitive Guide. And he's working on like a new edition of it too, because Cassandra V4 is about to drop. Right. 1 week, month, year, or whatever. But so he's in the process of that. It's a little irony there. But of all this stuff, what do you find yourself kind of most digging into these days?
Business problems.
For quick context. Yeah. Like a lot of people are like, Docker's dead, Docker's alive. I use Docker all the time. I'm not using Docker anymore. Like it's got to that point where people definitely have different opinions, and it's not magical anymore.
Like my background is really weird. Like I'm super deep application engineer is how I would generally call what I would generally like describe myself as. But like part of that, I really like, because of my time working at Amazon, like the ops informed development. Like I really feel like you have a hard time understanding your application if you don't understand how it runs. Yeah. And so I ended up like focusing on this whole Docker space, which led into whole DevOps learning and like super deep into like systems engineering. And so like it kind of depends on like when people met me, what they most closely associate with me with. So like half the guys I associate with now down in Phoenix, they're like, oh, Jeff's like the DevOps guy. I'm like, nah. Like, look, just because I understand it more than you do does not make me a DevOps guy. Like I'll teach you all about it, all you want to know all day long. But the reason I want to know about it is so I can do this other stuff. And so,
that's exactly why I even do any of that stuff.
Right.
Oh gosh, did I say that out loud?
No, I mean like it's great. Like the tools that are out there are amazing and powerful these days, and I love them so much because they allow me to get to the application. Right. And to do like things like healthy like AppSec and you know, keeping that kind of stuff in mind. But I love Docker. Docker's great. Docker's not dead. They're incredibly powerful. Like they're incredibly popular, even especially with enterprise. And like you know, but like everything is like hype cycle, right? Like the Gartner hype cycle BS, right? Like we're over here somewhere. Like it's not as interesting anymore. They haven't done anything that was like deeply engineering, like revolutionary for a while,
right?
Because you know, basically they got the pressure turned on by Google and the Kubernetes crew, and they're like, look, we need to start doing things that are solving business problems, not just engineering problems. And so that's great. Like hats off. They have done a great job, I think.
Yeah.
Probably accomplished way more than you could ask for a startup to do. Have bigger impact. But but a lot, like we're kind of like the ship has sailed for me, and for what I've seen from a lot of our clients for like the last few years, is like it's kind of like a foregone conclusion, like using containers and ended up like where Docker belongs in the stack and stuff like that. Like most people don't want to geek out on that, right? Like that's early adopter stuff. They want to geek out and get into all those specifics and like find the best solution.
Yeah.
Most people just want to, can I just have my packaging system, please? Yeah. So that I can like run this.
I want to ship the thing I want to ship for the business I'm trying to do.
Right. I'm trying to make money over here. Right. Like they just don't care about it that much.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like it shouldn't be like the goal of business is not to run containers.
Right. I feel like the last KubeCon had a lot of that conversation, and I even talked to Kelsey Hightower about it a little bit, and he said it in the keynote and stuff, and Rick Burns has been talking about it. It's like there's a lot of how to do the thing with the little thing for the other, like the next piece, and it's all just like widget. What are you doing though?
Right.
Like what's the purpose of all this being crammed together to make a thing happen? What are the things we need to get back to that? Like what's the organizational reason or the business reason or the purpose for this stuff? And I feel like, fortunately, like I went to a bunch of O'Reilly comps this year, and they've really, like a lot of the keynotes and the talks and the conferences have started to come back around to, oh yeah, we do all this stuff for us, us people that want to do life things like live.
Right.
So it's nice to see some of that starting to come around, but I feel like some of it is still kind of gazing.
Yeah, like
oh look, I did this in a container.
A lot of that
in my container.
I kind of like put a lot of that on the fact that like the space, like the business space around that, the gold rush, has petered out quite a bit. There's still a lot of people launching, you know, like open core products around like, oh, we're a Kubernetes company or something like that, and and that's fine. And that's going to happen for a long time, right? Because someone will have an idea and some engineer will have an idea and they'll make a business out of it. And then maybe they'll do something great. I don't know. But, you know, people have kind of stopped. Like, they're also in that other side of the hype cycle, right? And it's good, you know, like, and so that's kind of where we're at too, where, you know, we were doing, we got into consulting not to be consultants. Like consulting is great. I love helping people. I love teaching people, and I love like helping them like work through how to apply technology to their business. But ultimately, like the things that we see holding every single one of our clients back, and really every single one of our previous employers, had nothing to do with technology. So we got into it because we wanted to discover business problems that we can solve. You know, and so
isn't that the thing we were talking about on Twitter, or that we are talking about on Twitter now? I think. I feel like something about that topic came up related to, like once you get to a certain point doing software development and stuff, you realize that the hard problems aren't really always the technology anymore.
Absolutely. Well, the technology is kind of, that's just the context for solving problems, right?
Oh yeah, there you go. You mentioned the broader and deeper your experience, the more you become aware of second, third, and fourth order consequences of seemingly trivial decisions or obvious choices. That's a sentence. Cross-functional experience is invaluable. I love reading sentences out loud. I do that to myself all the time, and I'm just like, why did I write a whole paragraph as a sentence?
Like I use Hemingway app, and man, like Hemingway app just busts my chops every single time I drop something. It's like, yeah, grade level 27. Good luck. I'm just like, cool, man. Like, thanks for highlighting this. I got to bust out my period now. Like, just start dropping them in here. I'm like, but it makes sense. It says exactly what I wanted to say. It takes 12 times through to actually understand it. No, but yeah, like, so we're huge believers in mentorship. So we end up working with I prefer to work in settings where there's a lot of mixed degrees of experience. And so, I really like helping people along those discovery journeys that I went through. And so when you find the cocky kid who feels like they know everything about React or whatever, I'm like, congratulations, you've learned how to make it work. The next phase of your life is going to be learning how it will break and thinking about that first, right? And so usually when I say the step from if we wanted to do the whole developer versus engineer conversation, whatever, it's the next level of seniority is how to make a system work that's a foregone conclusion. You understand that deeply. Learning how do I program this is not a thing, right? The hard part is thinking about how would a system with this architecture end up failing, and then the third order problem is how are the teams that are going to be responsible for maintaining this over time? How are they going to understand it? How are they going? What parts are they going to have to continually spin back up on? Where's the brain drain going to occur? How are your dependencies going to shift over time? Right? If you take Rando Joe's random open source dependency, what's the probability that you're going to get a Bitcoin miner injected into your software dependency chain? Right? At some point in the future. These are the risks that you end up thinking about, not how do I make this work?
Yeah. You got me thinking about the whole roster of NPM issues as of late.
Oh man, you've got left pad, you've got event stream. I've loved talking about the JavaScript community, and when I'm interviewing people recently, because I like to ask them about software supply chain issues, and they're like, well, what do you mean? Well. Let's talk about any of the 100 events that have happened.
I got so much shit when I was writing a bunch of Node.js apps a few years ago, and people kept saying, why are you spending all this time putting a dependency tier in between the NPM server and the app? And I'm like, things could happen. Have you not thought about this? It seemed like something obvious to me, partly because I had done that for .NET and Java and all this other stuff, because you have an internal dependency server thing inside your enterprise to manage that stuff.
You're just your vetted cache, right? These are our vetted things. We can go to one place and say here, we can enumerate our third-party dependencies because we're vendoring them internally.
Right. I did have to send some emails after that project. I got that working and shipped the product and everything. And then a year or so later, the pad left thing, a bunch of stuff. And I was just ooh, link, email, send, see what I mean?
Yeah.
If you got that cache somewhere, you don't care immediately. Your stuff's okay still. And you can manage it on your time frame instead of just getting nuked by it.
Right. And and talking about build time, library dependencies versus runtime dependencies. What are your service dependencies? What are your business dependencies? And because a lot of that stuff is not as it'll just work as it seems. Because a lot of times it doesn't just work. I've been fighting with that all summer. And a third-party dependency is just not just working.
Right. Do you ever get the it's an easy problem to solve. We'll just train the users.
Yeah, anytime people throw just out there, I'm like, dude, just is a 4-letter word. Get that away from me. That's you want to really become a target for my criticism. Throw just around a little bit, and we'll see where this goes.
Chat about that, yeah. I feel immediately my immediate response phrase, I could just put this into a system as default response. Anytime somebody says, we'll just do, it would be, are we sure about this? With a very strange emoji at the end that looks confused or something. But yeah.
But there's a huge risk about this, right? I feel my gray beard just growing and growing, right? There's a sweet spot between being aware of these third, fourth, fifth order problems and just being the guy who just says no about everything. Right? Because speed in business matters, making decisions, moving forward in tech obviously matter, right? You can do stuff incredibly fast. And so how do you balance like rapid iteration and total chaos with like a little bit longer term vision, and like understanding, like bridging the gap between like I can do this cool thing and make things work, and like expressing the value in business terms. And it's hard. Like, I mean, I fight myself with this daily, where I'm like, oh, I can't do this because of this, or I need to figure out like, oh, I should do a deep dive into like Angular versus React for the next 12 days instead of just cranking out a POC, right? Because like, oh, I have to figure out which one I want to use. It's like, well, cool. In the time that I've spent researching it, I could have done like 3 POCs in each.
Yep.
So, I don't know.
I feel like the amount of time that I've spent, well, case in point, I'm pretty sure I spent about 20% of my time between 2013 and 2016 on Node.js projects. 20% of my time was spent talking about, because it's such chaos, convention.
Yeah.
And like, well, how do we want to write this? How do we want to name our variables? How do we want to do this? How do we want to do that? Do we want to push for this ECMA version or whatever, blah blah blah.
It was such a hot time too, because like the language was rapid iterating. Like you had the whole emergence of like modules, like and like the contention there, and still you see like,
should we use CoffeeScript?
Right.
Should we use
CoffeeScript? Oh my god! And then you end up with like this whole like other thing with. The whole thing was like, or like async versus callbacks, and like this whole massive opinions of pattern, right? Yeah. And like I've really loved watching. Not so much participating in the Node system, but like watching it, because in like 2011, it started off with like these guys were just like, ugh, Java, like forget this, like Eclipse, gross, Tomcat, gross. We don't need any of that. We'll just implement this whole thing. So it was like this very like youthful energy, like ultra anarchistic, like we'll just reinvent the whole world, keep it simple, right? And then like I got to like watch with joy over like the next 4 years as they systematically recreated everything that they hated about the entire Java ecosystem.
Yes.
Right, where it's like, oh, hell with Eclipse, and then like 4 years later we've got Atom, we've got VS Code, we've got all this stuff that's like just the exact same thing. It's just not called Eclipse.
Yeah. It's when that started happening too, I was like, you realize like even Java had went through some of this, except it did start from at least the impetus of a corporate environment that understood you were going to run into all this shit.
Right.
But this was just like, oh, we have good culture. Like good people are good, so we'll start from that. I'm like, that.
And that's fine though. Like,
okay, I'll go roll with you on that one for a while.
Don't get me wrong. Like, there's no criticism of it at all.
Yeah,
I loved it. It was amazing to watch, because it was like, this was like functional learning in the public eye. Like, web servers, to hell with that. And then like, I remember like in like 2010 or like 2011 or 2012, they're like, oh, there's a bug in the Node HTTP engine that like misinterprets like non-capitalized HTTP methods. I was like, well, this is some basic protocol adoption stuff. Like, this is a basic bug, man. Like, cool. Like, maybe these other things got some stuff right.
Yeah. You know, I still to this day, one of the bugs that I spent the most time trying to fix was an installer bug for building an MSI for Windows, because one of the things that read into XML was case sensitive. And everywhere in the docs, everywhere in the docs for this thing, it said, not case sensitive, not case sensitive. I and 3 other people at different times paired up on this and tried to like write test, prove it out, implement a fix or whatever. We did this and did this and this. It took like 2 weeks to make a stupid MSI installer. Then finally, my cohort, actually, Jeff, thanks for the suggestion years ago on this. The goofy, why don't you just capitalize it and see if it works? Oh my god, that fixed it. That random suggestion, just capitalize it like you have in the class object thing for the, and it built.
Yeah.
And we'd spent like weeks on that crap. It was so wonderful. But yeah, the running into convention and all that, in industry is always kind of funny when it's funny in a good way when it's done in the public eye, like that learning process.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know. API contracts are hard.
They are. Naming, API contracts, et cetera, et cetera.
All of it. I've got a million anecdotes. Could talk about that for years.
So, looking at the time here, I don't want to eat up your whole day because I know we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours more. So, thanks for coming on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Everybody have fun. Actually, I need to do this. It's more representative of the show. Y'all have a good one, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
Until then, stay out of trouble. May your code build, and all that good jazz.